only for patients with a certain morphine equivalent. So if they don't have that, they're not going to cover it.
Thank you.
All right, hello. My name is Amy Pick, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about well-being. And so we're going to cover looking at the areas of well-being. We're going to talk about the importance of health professions burnout, as well as some strategies to help you with resiliency and that you can maybe help mitigate or reduce your burnout. So I believe you've been sitting since 1, is that correct? So do you mind standing? Is that okay? So for many of us, just in life, right? We run everywhere. We put self-care to the side. Yet when we look at what we would do with our cell phone or a low computer, what's the first thing we do if we hit 20%? We plug it in, right? None of us think, I'm going to keep going to see how long I can make it till that cell phone dies, right? Well, maybe we do. So I want you to stop, and I want you to close your eyes. I want to put your hand on your heart. And I just want you to feel your breath. Now I want you to take a deep breath in. And exhale. Let's do 2 more of those. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And with your eyes closed, I want you to think about 2 questions. The first is, what makes me happy? And the second one is, who am I thankful for? All right, you can open your eyes and sit down. And as you sit down, please shout out, what makes you happy? Grandkids, family. What else? Your job? You're the first person in like 1,000 that I've ever given this talk to that says my job. Anyone else a job? Move my mic up, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, job. Anyone else? Anything else? Pets, gardening. Hobbies. Good, and so I want you to think about that when we talk about well-being. Well-being doesn't necessarily mean or is equivalent to happiness, but we know subjective well-being is very important to happiness. And so let's go through, looking at well-being. Before I start, though, I pulled the literature to find out what is out there about pharmacy technician burnout. We know that the National Academy of Medicine has a huge clinician well-being initiative focused on clinician burnout. And what we are finding across almost all health professions is that we're all at risk for some degree of burnout. And burnout is a significant effect or consequence for organizations because we think about high staff turnover. In individuals, we think about depression, anxiety, suicide, use of drugs, alcohol. And so we know as an organization we need to be focused on clinician well-being, but also as an individual, there are things we can do for well-being. So when I looked to find what literature's out there, I did find an article that's published in AAPT for health system pharmacists, and it talked about examining burnout in pharmacy technicians from North Carolina. And they had a very, very large survey that was sent to over 2,500 pharmacy technicians in North Carolina here last year. A low response rate, about 11%, but what they found is that 69% of pharmacy technicians are suffering from burnout in at least one of the 3 areas of burnout. And we're going to go through those. So almost 70% of pharmacy technicians say that they're experiencing some degree of burnout. And when they looked to see what factors those are, they found that it was younger individuals. Interestingly, they did find a gender correlation with men. So male gender were at increased risk. And that's something that we haven't seen necessarily in pharmacy is a gender correlation. And then the third one was they found a higher degree of burnout in people that did not know there were resources out there among their organization. And so I think it's important for us to first of all recognize burnout is not our fault. It is a systems issue, an organizational issue. And so always keep that in mind when we talk about burnout. And I think it's also important for us to recognize burnout is different than stress. I don't have anything to disclose on this for pharmaceutical or any kind of commercial projects, but I will say I was burnt out in 2008. I did not realize it at the time until one day I drove home sobbing in tears because I was not being able to pick up my kids on time. I was staying too late for an IRB meeting. The next morning I had a P&T meeting. I was a mess. But burnout, again, it's different than stress. We all have stress. We thrive on stress. You know, Dr. Sullivan, you probably really thrive on stress, right? That individual coming into the ED, what do I do with them? It's great, right? Our adrenals can handle that. But too much stress, prolonged cortisol, we have adrenal fatigue. And that's what we think about then with burnout. It is different than stress. Christine Masloch talks about, it is well known in the literature for burnout. There are 3 areas we look at when we think about burnout. The first one is emotional exhaustion, right? We are tired. The second one is cynicism. We become very cynical at work, right? Oh, you know what? My boss doesn't care about anything. The company I work for, they just add on more workload. Nothing's ever going to result in change. And then all of a sudden, we have decreased efficacy, decreased personal accomplishments. We question our worth. And again, this triad is much different than just someone being stressed about a situation. And so that's where the emphasis is on now, is what can we do to help combat health profession burnout, and that includes pharmacy technicians. And so there's a lot of literature out there, a growing amount of literature about well-being. You know, even the CDC has information about well-being, saying well-being is a meaningful for people in society because it tells us people perceive that their lives are going well, right? Well-being, be well. And so when we look at well-being, there's a lot of different elements to it depending on who you utilize. For today's talk, I pulled one that you might have the book on, written by 2 Gallup individuals, Rath and Harder, looking at the 5 essential elements of well-being. A really easy, fun read. And what Gallup has shown is that they propose there are 5 areas of well-being. And so when we went around and said what makes us happy, you know, we heard some of those, right? We heard the job makes me happy. My family makes me happy. We heard about hobbies. And so what we know about well-being is you need to be thriving in all areas to be well. And so I want to cover these briefly here. And so the first area I think we're very familiar with, right? Physical well-being. How do you feel about your physical well-being? You know, are you sleeping? How's your diet? How's exercising? Ironically, we know what we need to be doing with physical well-being, but most of us put that aside on a daily basis. All right, we say, oh, well, I'll exercise tomorrow. I went with my kids to Adventureland. I don't know how many are from Nebraska or Iowa. Yesterday, we got back this morning here. You know, I was like, oh, I can eat all of that funnel cake, the donuts. and I'll work it off tomorrow, right? We all do that. And so putting ourselves as a priority in physical well-being. We look at community, and all of the articles and researchers out there would say you have to have a strong sense of community if you're truly well. And so you must have a connection to your community. You must be engaged in community. Social is also really important. You have to have healthy relationships. And again, that looks very different from some of us. Some, it's family. Others, it's a very large circle of family and friends. But you have to make time for those relationships. Financial. Interestingly, if you look at the literature, there's not a number. Someone always asks, is there a number for us to be financially well? And there's not a number. It is what is comfortable for you in your life. But we know that finances are important for us to be well. And then the last one is career. And for all of us, career is important, right? We spend most of our time working. And so making sure that your job is maybe your calling, that you find a purpose in your job, that you're satisfied with your career. And if you're not, I would urge you to go home and think about what aligns with where you want to go. What is your vision for life? What else do you want to do with your job? What else can you do in your current job? And so this is from Gallup with well-being. I also like to talk about, Bob Rosen has a great book out there called Grounded and looks at areas of well-being. And that model, we throw spirituality in. And so knowing that we have a global connectedness, and spirituality means something different to anyone, but literature would say that, again, spirituality is very important for people to be well. Again, whatever that looks like. And so what can we do to help us with our well-being? The one that we're going to really talk about today is resiliency. And so we know that resiliency, as well as grit, is important to our well-being. Being able to overcome the stressors of life, overcome some of these obstacles. And so one way to be resilient is trying to be in the moment. And so when was the last time you felt your breath? Right? When you sit there and you think about it, prior to this moment, when was the last time you felt it? Right now, can you feel your legs against the seat? Can you feel where your feet are? For most of us, again, we just run from one activity to another, but I would urge you to be mindful, to be present in the moment. Developing strategies then would be helpful to overcome those stressors. The next one I want to talk about briefly is gratitude. Anyone have a gratitude journal? We got one. I love gratitude journals. I have one at home, and actually I brought one to work here a couple months ago. But we know that gratitude is really, really important to well-being. And so when we think about gratitude, a good rule of thumb is thinking about 3 things you're grateful for, and those should be people. 3 people you are grateful for. There's literature about gratitude, and it suggests that you don't have to write or journal down every day to have positive benefits when we look at happiness and well-being. We know that even just journaling once a week about something or 3 people you're thankful for improves your well-being. And so think about, who are the people you're thankful for? It might be someone small. It doesn't have to be big. It might be that someone held the door outside today. Or yesterday you met a brand new face that was smiling when you walked in. But write those down. And if you haven't done so, I would urge you to even take it further and get out thank you notes and write gratitude thank yous for those you're happy for. because all too often we wait until it's too late and they're no longer around. So take time to show your gratitude and who you're grateful for. And I'm going to leave you with these 10 thoughts then. It says it was written for physician wellness and well-being. I think it's applicable to every one of us. It talks about, thou shalt not expect anyone to reduce your stress, right? It's only us. We control that. Thou shalt not resist change, right? The only thing constant in our lives is change. Embrace change. Thou shalt not take thyself in vain. Gosh, it's so hard or easy to be hard on ourselves. Let it go. Give yourself grace. You gave yourself permission today to attend this conference, to attend this talk. Remember what is holy to thee. Take time, look at your values, look at your goals, and make sure your values align with your goals. Honor thy limits and your boundaries. It's okay to say no, right? Say no. If it doesn't align with who you are or where you want to be or where you want to go, say no. Thou shalt not work alone. You have a lot of individuals in your pharmacy that you work with, a lot of colleagues. Rely on them. Ask for help when you need it. And make sure you don't take it out on others. Again, it's not their fault. Make sure you keep that to yourself. And I always say, thou shalt not work harder, right? You shall work smarter. And I think there was a presentation earlier today or yesterday that talked about that. Don't reinvent the wheel. See what's out there. Ask your colleagues. And then the last two, you know what? Find joy, master your work, and make sure you always continue to learn. And so with that in mind, that was a quick overview of well-being. I really, really thank you for attending this. Again, probably a little bit different of a talk, but I would argue it is just as important as any type of content or knowledge. We know that we need to have tools in our toolbox to overcome burnout. So thank you.